am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who were seared by the withering flames of injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, we must face the tragic fact that the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro is still left on a lonely island of poverty amidst a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languishes in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we have come here today to dramatize such an appalling condition. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were singing a promissory note at which all Americans would fall heir. This promissory note was a promise that all men were created equal. Yes, black men as well as white men were guaranteed the certain unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious that America has defaulted this promise insofar as our citizens of color are concerned. America has given the Negro people a bad check that has been marked insufficient funds. This bad check that we have today gave us nothing but pain, suffering, and the motives of nothing but wretched hatred and hostility. In the nation's capital, to cash a check, in which we will do so, it shall give us upon our demand the riches of freedom and the security of liberty. Though America did not honor this sacred obligation, a check which has come back marked with this horrible tragedy, as if I quote. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the urgency of the moment. Now is not the time to engage in the luxury of taking the grudge, the drug of gradualism. Now is not the time to a bad check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that the great vaults of opportunity contain insufficient funds. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for a nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro will not pass without an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needs to blow off steam and will not be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro receives its citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of the nation until a brighter day of justice emerges. And that is something I must say to my people who stand on the threshold into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not find these guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom through the cup of bitterness and deceit. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. We must again and again meet physical force with soul force. The new militancy that has reached and engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to the distrust of all white people, for many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, realize that their destiny is forever tied to our destiny, and that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. They have came to realize that we cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge to always walk ahead, to never turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will we be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, tired and heavy with fatigue, can't even gain simple lodging on the roads and highways. On the motels of the highways and the hotels of the city. We can never be satisfied as long as the unspeakable horrors of police brutality come on after intense struggle. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their adulthood and robbed of their dignity by the signs that say, "For whites only." We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York cannot find a reason in which to vote. No, we are not satisfied. We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that many of you have came here today out of many trials and tribulations. Some of you have came from fresh narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom has left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to South Carolina, knowing that the situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of these difficulties, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up to the true meaning of its creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day in the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that in the state of Mississippi, sweltering with racial injustice and oppression, will be transformed into an oasis, of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 children will grow up in a nation where they are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill shall be made low, the rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked places shall be made straight. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing the new meaning of the song, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, let freedom reign." And so if America is to be a great nation, let freedom reign. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom reign. From the snow-capped Alps of Colorado, let freedom reign. From the Hayden Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom reign. From the curvaceous slopes of California, let freedom reign. But not only that, let freedom reign. From the Stone Mountain of Georgia, let freedom reign. From the lookouts of Tennessee, let freedom reign. When we allow freedom reign, when we let it reign from every city and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last.